Only one precious week to get better if you're an Oklahoma football player. The Sooners are in camp for another week with the spring game on April 24th. The voice of college football breaking down Oklahoma football, and we do so with Jason Ray from Last Word on College Football. Jason, how we doing?
I'm good, Mark. Thanks for having me on again.
Absolutely. So, news and notes from the past week since we last spoke with you.
Yeah, there's been a couple of more interviews with coaches. Lincoln Riley talked to the media on Monday, and one of the questions, of course, the burning question always is from the reporters and just kind of the fans alike: who's impressing, who's maybe not playing as well as you would have anticipated, who are some of the younger kids that are playing well. So Lincoln Riley talked a little bit about that. He's very hesitant to give any sort of public praise to some of the freshmen or some of the newcomers, but from everything I've heard, here's just a little bit of a rundown on who's doing well and some interesting things to kind of think about. So really on the offensive side, Mario Williams is a name that at the wide receiver position that keeps coming out, just in terms of a kid that's as a true freshman coming in here in the spring, who looks the part, who looks like a guy very similar to Marvin Mims last year that was able to come in and compete and start and play a prominent role, as a true freshman on the team. So he's a guy. Eric Gray is a guy that continues to get praise. The noise kind of gets louder and louder on him almost every single day, just in terms of things that he's able to do. One of the I think it was Spencer Rattler the other day, he had mentioned that he took kind of a swing pass and went 80 yards, took it 80 yards to the house for a touchdown in one of the scrimmages that they'd had. So really continue to hear good things about him, just in terms of him being an all-around back. Maybe not necessarily as good of a good as a runner as Kennedy Brooks is, but from an all-around catching the ball out of the backfield, blocking, picking up blitzes, just being smart. It looks like he's continuing to maybe separate himself a little bit here in the spring at the running back position. From an offensive line perspective, Eric Swinson is a guy that Riley singled out as a guy that's really improved a decent amount last year towards the end of the season. So he'll be in a battle from a tackle. From a starting position perspective at the tackle with probably Wanye Morris and Anton Harrison, who both Anton Harrison played last year. Shared time with Swinson and obviously Wanye Morris going from Tennessee to Oklahoma this past year. One thing that we've talked a whole lot about, just in terms of seems to be a lot more buzz and a lot more excitement on the defensive side of the ball. And so a couple of guys that Riley talked about really on the defensive tackle interior of the defensive line. Josh Ellison is a guy who played, sparingly behind Perrion Winfrey last year a little bit. He subbed in there. He's maybe having the best spring of anyone, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And I think that's from a defensive line. One of the things that's interesting that I've heard is really the defensive line has pretty much handled and dominated the spring in the defense. So that's something that you like to see, you like to hear. You would expect the defense to be a little bit ahead of the offense early on in the spring, specifically knowing what's coming. So he's a guy. Latrell McCutcheon is another guy that you keep hearing about. Some of the other running backs the defensive backs have been nicked up a bit. So I think that has given him the opportunity to get in there a little bit. So I think, one of the things that was really interesting is just kind of hearing how much the defense has dominated, specifically the defensive line. It's certainly a little bit to be expected, in terms of Oklahoma's offensive line might have been the weak link of the offense last year, and then just how good Oklahoma is on the defensive line coming in. They feel like they have about 7 or 8 guys that they can, rotate in and out there and not see much of a drop off. So much more depth than you'd ever seen, in quite some time at Oklahoma. So those are a few of the things that I've kind of heard. Just one maybe a little bit surprising, have the defense just playing so well. From some of the things I've heard, it's pretty evident on that they've improved even much more from the end of last season through spring ball. One thing that was very interesting, it's not necessarily from a spring perspective, but this new day and age where you're coming off post-COVID. So there's a couple of kids, Caleb Williams and Billy Bowman, who are early enrollees, true freshmen. One of the things that's interesting with them is just kind of thinking about everything that's on a kid's plate. Coming in the spring, you're in high school now. You're thrust into, one of the blue bloods of college football in Oklahoma. They are going through spring practice. They're taking a spring, college course load, and they're actually finishing up a few high school courses through their high school at Oklahoma. So, and those are two kids that Caleb Williams is going to be prominent certainly from a backup perspective, most likely for Oklahoma this year. And then Billy Bowman at the nickel and the defensive back position may have a chance to help, at least in the rotation. So, kind of kudos to those kids being able to go through a full spring and then juggling two different course loads at the same time is something that you don't see very often. And it's not something that's been allowed in the past, but just because of the COVID year in 2020, it's something that's been allowed as a one-time waiver to do both high school and college at the same time. So kudos to those kids to be able to balance those things.
Don't know if you had a chance to see the ESPN Football Power Index that was released a few days ago, Jason. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe Oklahoma's number 2 in the country.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma was number 2, just behind Alabama. And I think the validity of that poll seems to get squandered more and more every year. I think you had an Oklahoma State team that was in the top 10. There was I can't recall right off the bat. There was another team that was very far, typically off the radar, maybe even fringe top 25 that was listed in the top 10. I can't recall the name of the school at this point. But
yeah, my eyebrow was raised at Mississippi State number 8, Oklahoma State number 9.
Mississippi State, yeah, that's the team I was thinking of. Both teams, Oklahoma State's losing a lot from last year, specifically at the running back and wide receiver position, losing a decent amount on defense. So,
Jason Ray, last word on college football. Please head on over there. Check out the work by Jason, Kevin McGuffey, Tony Siracusa, and the rest of the crew at Last Word on College Football. Please like the video here, share the video on social media. You enjoy it. You watch the videos. Others will as well. So please share the videos on social media and subscribe right here. Jason, we always appreciate you stopping by. We're going to have Jason back for a live show to take your comments and your questions directly live next Friday before the spring game, 2:30 Eastern time next Friday before Saturday's spring game on the 24th. All right, Jason, good to see you.
All right. Thanks, Mark.